there, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you my top 10 list of things I think you should know about owning a Betta. Before I get started, let me introduce today's handsome male models. This is Jim Hopper, aka Hopper. He's a white opal half moon that enjoys yoga and being sassy when no one's looking. Steve, short for Steve Harrington, is a koi plakat and a former juvenile delinquent. He hasn't eaten any fancy shrimp in months and is on the path toward inner peace. Wrath is a dragon plakat. He knows you like bad boys and you just can't help yourself. Radar is the oldest of the bunch and also a koi plakat. He's a sweet, gentle soul who isn't at his best right now. His road to recovery's been a little rocky, but he's hanging on like a champ. All right, now that you have met our beautiful male models, let's get started with the top 10 things I think every beginner should know, at least in my opinion, about owning a Betta. Number 1, longfin and shortfin Bettas have different requirements. When most people think about Bettas, they think about the longfin varieties. But the plakat or the shortfin variety are just as popular now. And just as an aside, a lot of those are males, not all shortfin Bettas are female. Which fish you choose will dictate a lot about the way your tank will be set up. Things like decor, flow, tank mates, tank depth, those things that I'll get into farther down the list as they come up. But you want to think about longfin Bettas as fish with capes. Beautiful but long, heavy, delicate capes that can't take off. Generally, Bettas in stores are young and their fins will get longer as they age. So keep this in mind while deciding what type of setup you want. You'll want to avoid things that a long cape could snag on, like sharp plastic plants, jagged or pointed driftwood, or other decor. Plakats are just as feisty as their longfin brothers, but instead of capes to slow them down a bit, their shorter fins are like little turbo packs. Number 2, tank shape matters just as much as tank volume. I'm sure you've watched other videos that go into the right water volume for a Betta and why that matters, but let me just touch on it real quick just in case. Bettas can be kept in small tanks. That being said, anything under 2.5 gallons, in my opinion, isn't in the best interest of the animal. Now, when I say this, I'm referring to permanent living quarters, not temporary living situations you'd see a lot of Betta breeders using. Basically, the more water you have, the easier it is to maintain water quality. Think of a tank like one of those little hiking trail rest stop bathrooms without plumbing or ventilation. The smaller it is, the stinkier it's going to get. The big ones will still smell, but the area makes it more tolerable. The only way to get rid of the stink is to clean it frequently. So, what do I mean by tank shape? Some are tall and narrow, and some are short and wide. Bettas and a lot of other small fish do much better in tanks with more horizontal swimming space than vertical swimming space. And this is another one where tail size matters. Bettas are a labyrinth fish, which means that even though they do breathe through their gills, they can and do often breathe air from the atmosphere. While a plakat generally doesn't have a problem getting to the surface to take a breath of air, the longfin Bettas will struggle with it sometimes. Not only do they not have the greatest propulsion with the long tail, it also weighs them down. You don't want your fish to get too tired to get to the surface. Both the long and short fin Bettas will appreciate horizontal swimming space over vertical swimming space. Number 3, get a heater. Also, get a heater. A Betta is a tropical fish. They come from warm environments. Unfortunately, most pre-made setups don't include a heater, and a lot of beginners don't know they need one. When you get a heater, make sure it's the correct strength for your aquarium. Most heater packaging will have this info printed on it. Avoid getting something that just says Betta heater unless it's powerful enough to heat the amount of water you have. You wouldn't want to get a tiny camping space heater for your giant open concept home, would you? It's the same concept. A lot of heaters are preset, and that's fine as long as it's the right strength. You'll want to keep the temperature somewhere between 78 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 25 to 27 degrees Celsius. Place the heater somewhere where it will get adequate flow over the body of the heater so the heat will be dispersed all over the tank. And unless otherwise stated, position it at an angle. And while you're at it, it would be really helpful to get a tank thermometer or at least have one on hand. I can't stress how important a heater is. Every person I've met that's new to fish and has a sick betta generally sees a huge improvement when they put a heater in the tank. Get a filter with the right amount of flow for your betta. Okay, here's another case where tail size matters. The general advice is to stick with low flow for all bettas across the board. In my experience, placottes can thrive in normal flow and seem to like to play in it. With normal flow being something like this, a hang-on back filter rated for a 20-gallon or smaller, not a power head or something crazy. And longfin bettas, that's another story. These poor little guys and their fins just act like sails and they get caught up in the flow like plastic bags in the wind. It's not fun for them, it can tire them out, and it can damage their fins. If you go with a hang-on back filter, make sure you get one with a variable flow feature, and I would really suggest getting a pre-filter sponge for the intake. That's the part that sucks up the water. As your betta's fins can get sucked into it and they can get damaged. A lot of people choose to go with a sponge filter for a betta tank, and that is just fine. They are very low flow and filter small tanks just fine. Just remember that you'll need an air pump and some airline tubing to run it. Flow valves can also be purchased separately if you find that it makes too many bubbles. Number 5, get food that floats. Bettas generally like to eat food that floats on the surface. Most betta-specific food will float and will stay floating until it's eaten. Now, some bettas will swim after food if it starts sinking, and they'll scavenge throughout the day sometimes. That's not all of them. But betta food floats for a reason, and that's because they like it that way. Once you feed, make sure you're not overfeeding, which can cause health problems, and please do yourself a favor and follow the guidelines on the food package. Number 6, let your betta live solo for a little while. Once you get your betta, you're going to go to the fish store. And at the fish store, you're going to walk by all those pretty tanks full of beautiful tropical fish, and the cold, dark hand of temptation is going to reach out to you. It's going to tell you that your betta is lonely and needs a friend, but be strong. Your feisty betta friend is fine flying solo for a little while. Now, don't get me wrong, bettas can and do live very well with other fish. They make great community fish. Sometimes, very rarely, they can live with shrimp. But on the other hand, some of them will outright murder your shrimp and take chunks out of your other fish's tails too. So until you get the hang of bettas, I would suggest dialing back the enthusiasm and cultivating the number one virtue of fish keeping: patience. Like I mentioned earlier, most people get bettas when they're fairly young. I'm not talking the babies, I mean the ones that are usually found at Petco or PetSmart. They're the most popular size. They're more like obnoxious teenagers when most people buy them. Giving them time to adjust to a new life and a new environment, in my experience, is the best way to go. Let them mature for a while and calm down, and allow yourself to learn the gentle art of fish keeping. Take that extra time to bond with your new pet and learn about the most compatible tank mates for bettas. A lot of that will depend on your tank size, the behavior of your fish and the other fish, and again, tail length. Number 7, create a space near the surface where your betta can rest. Bettas are a lot more lazy than people realize. They like to loaf around the tank, especially if they have to drag around long fins all day. Even the shorter fin ones like to hang out and chill quite a bit. Since they breathe air, it's best to give them a place to rest a couple inches from the surface. This can be something like a betta hammock or plants that extend toward the surface. Number 8, keep it interesting, my friends. Bettas are pretty incredible little creatures. They're very personable and they really thrive with some kind of enrichment. Kind of like an animal care staff at an aquarium or a zoo, you can practice some enrichment with your betta to keep them from getting too bored. Bettas will do really well when they can flare a few times a week. Flaring is when they stretch out their gills, flare out their fins, and make a display. You can hold up a mirror to the tank and they'll flare at their reflection, and there's also specialty betta mirrors. You can also make sure that you make their environment fun for them to explore. Give them caves, castles, make a nice little planted jungle, stuff like that. And some people have even trained their bettas to do tricks like jump or swim through rings, and some bettas even chase laser pointers. Number 9, if you like it, then you should put a lid on it. Yep, a lot of people have bettas in tanks without lids. I used to, and to be honest, I don't really like the look of tank lids, and I went a long time with no problem. But then I had 2 bettas jump out of 2 separate tanks within the same month. They jumped out while I was asleep and I couldn't save them, and that is why you should have a lid. Bettas jump. Number 10, clean your tank frequently. All right, let's get real here for a moment. This is a big one, and yeah, I'm gonna get a little ranty about it because this is really important. Remember when I said that a tank is like a bathroom without plumbing or ventilation? It's true. You can add a filter, which is a great step, but it doesn't make all that waste go away. And yeah, your tank should be cycled before you put a fish in there, but in all honesty, I know a lot of people aren't going to do that. But even if you did cycle it, it doesn't mean that your tank is self-cleaning. I'm not here to tell you about cycling. There's a bajillion videos on that. I would definitely suggest learning as much as you can about that. I'm here to tell you to be a responsible pet owner and not force your fish to swim around breathing its own waste all the time. Add filtration in the form of filters or live plants. These are wonderful ways to help pull some of the waste chemicals out of the water. Now, this can get really complicated really quick, but I'll save that for another time. Right now, if you've just got a betta because you fell in love with it, because hey, you know what, it happens, here's what I suggest. Do a 25% water change with dechlorinated water once a week. Pick a day, make that be your water change day. Gravel vac on that day, that'll be a big help too. The more often you do this, the less work it will be. If you can't do it weekly, at least do it bi-weekly. And if this is not something you think you can do or want to do, then don't get a betta. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Yeah, you know, they can live in jars, but their water's changed nearly 100% every couple days in those jars. And yeah, your friend Misty has a betta that lives in a gunky tank she never cleans and it's alive. But is it healthy? I really doubt it. A fish is not an ornament. It's a pet too. It's got a little heart and lungs and brain, and it feels pain just like the rest of us do. It deserves to be cared for just like any other pet. Unlike other pets, you not only have to take care of the animal, but you also have to take care of its environment. And fish keeping is a definite learning experience. I know it seems complicated now, but I guarantee if you stick with it, it will get much easier.